Hello and welcome to this week's TNC Oppo preview. Actually, there's already been a weekly Oppo preview, 2 in 1 week. And of course, last time out, it was a solid point versus Palace on Wednesday night. Up next, oh dear, it's time to see whether we've got what it takes to beat Manchester City at Carrow Road. We have done it before, and who better to give us all of the latest City insights than huge Manchester City fan and Blue Moon podcast host, David Mooney. David, good evening to you. Thank you for chatting.
Anytime. Not bad. I've been better. But I'd like to say it was something heroic, but I'd literally just blocked a shot with my hand, and not my wrist. But I didn't even I've not even broken it. That's how flimsy this anecdote is.
I wouldn't normally wish injury upon players, but I sincerely hope something like that happens to Edison at the weekend because we're going to need it for sure. What's the mood like the Etihad right now, David?
It's pretty good, as you might expect. There's not really that much cause for concern. There is a little bit of a weird kind of discrepancy between everybody outside of City and everybody inside of City of how they're looking at the season so far. Because a lot of people are talking like the Premier League title is done and dusted and it's over. But you speak to City fans inside the Etihad, and I think quite rightly they'll point to the fact that. If Liverpool's games in hand go their way, then they're 6 points behind. And one of their games then to follow is City at the Etihad. So win that and it's 3 points. City have won the title from a worse position at this point in the season. Yeah. So it's not over until it's not over until it's over. But City have got all the cards at the minute. So you wouldn't want to be in anybody else's position. I'm not denying that they're not in a good position, but what I am saying is that it still needs winning so far, yeah.
Well, and look, I'm sure, after Saturday, you'll lose one of those cards and it will be, a bit tighter at the top. So, David, last time out for you guys, it was a win against Brentford, 2-0 at home. What did you take from that performance against Brentford? Because, I've only watched the highlights back, but am I right in saying one of the goals was a penalty?
Penalty and goalkeeper error. It was solid, but not spectacular. I think there was never really any doubt of who was going to win the game. But Brentford made it really, really difficult for City to actually go and turn their possession into goals. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a huge number of chances from the game that, other than a couple of set pieces or a couple of moments where City almost got through. And it was one of those frustrating watches where you're watching your team have all of the ball, knock it around, and kind of really, really put the opposition onto the back foot. But then at the end of the day, you say the goalkeeper didn't really have a lot to do. He ended up catching a few. There was a couple of times I made one of those fortune favours the brave decisions in the run up to it, where I put João Cancelo as my fantasy league captain, and there was a couple of moments where he wriggled his way through in the box, and I thought, it's happening here. He's gonna score, and then his finish was very much a defender trying to score in an effort from corner of the box or something. So there were moments where City could have extended the lead a bit further, but it was really, really, really compact and really hard to get through. Brentford didn't really offer that much going forward, so there was never really any doubt that City wouldn't end up getting over the line, but they just made it hard work.
Well, that's music to Norwich fans' ears, I think, certainly regarding Brentford, because I still think Brentford are going to fall into that trap. But I must admit, David, I'm taking a bit of confidence from this because, and maybe it's wrong for me to do so, but I'm looking at Brent, and this is with no disrespect to Brentford, but I look at Man City versus Brentford at the Etihad, and I think it absolutely reeks of 4-5, maybe even 6-0, even Brentford, considering the players that you've got fit, what you've been able to do to teams this season, what you did to Norwich at the start of the season. But the reason why I'm saying that is that Brentford effectively, am I right in saying, maybe parked the bus against you?
They did this weird thing where They weren't. When you say the phrase "part of the bus," what the image you get from that is that players just everybody drops deep and they never leave their own penalty area. But actually, what happened was they would press City. They kind of tried to press City a little bit, but as soon as like the first couple of presses didn't work, it was everybody sprint back to your own goal as quickly as you can and then get in behind the ball. And City are not really a team. Like everybody has in their head this image of Pep Guardiola's City as the one that gets the ball and breaks away and scores, goal after goal on the counter-attack. Just isn't true. The team that did that was the 17-18 100-point City that had Sane on the left, Sterling on the right, Aguero through the middle. They don't have the counter-attack players anymore. They don't. They're much better going. Listen, we're gonna muck this up if we try and hit you on the counter attack. So let's just keep possession, make the sensible passes, and we might keep the ball for 5 minutes and see what openings we can work out in that way. So I don't think I think Brentford looked at that and went, they're not going to try and play through us really quickly. So let's try and press them for a couple of passes, and then as soon as they get past that, then we'll go back and set up ranks. So it wasn't a park the bus. It was kind of a kind of reverse the bus into the parking space and then hold it, then park it.
Well, but to be fair, David, even that gives me hope. Before we go any further, I must say hello to everyone that's joining us, watching us live, and also, of course, the people that are watching this back on record. Hello, lovely to see you, and I hope you've had a lovely week. Let's first of all bring up a comment from Jack Lee. City fan, pretty obvious. Aguero's in his profile picture. He says, I reckon this game will be tough for both sides, but I'll go with a 3-1 City win. I think that means us, obviously. But I back you to Thank you very much, Jack. Appreciate that. Bailey's in on YouTube as well. He says, or they say, or she says, it's about to be a Scorpion Saturday. Well, I'll certainly take that indeed. Boris, maybe Johnson is joining us. Hello, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Get to work. James Novak said, Mood is the best team in all the land, in all the world. I think I'm assuming you're a City fan, and I can't argue that you are definitely one of the best teams in the world. So there we go. Finn says that Josh Sargent is going to get a hat trick. I think that will be an absolute miracle and would be the most iconic hat trick of all time if it does happen. Chloe Goodwin on Facebook, we beat them once, we can do it again. Our team are now fighting. Let's go Yellows. On that note, David, we will eventually talk about that game as we have to. But before we do that, realistically, is there a single weak area, spot, tactic? How the hell do Norwich go about beating Manchester City on Saturday?
It's really hard to say that you just target this one area, because it doesn't work like that, and it's not worked like that for a while. The biggest way that City have struggled this season, the 2 games against Southampton, the game at the Etihad against Palace, those sorts of games, what happens is, in my mind, a lot of those games, City were pressed and City were under pressure when they had the ball, but it's not really true what happened there. What those teams did was they cut off the avenues of passes. So they looked at Edison, they looked at in whoever was playing centre half. It would be probably 2 of Stones, Laporte, and Diaz. That makes the combination up. And they went, listen, we're not going to chase you down, because there's no point in chasing you down. You'll just pass it to somebody else. What we'll do is we'll step towards you and we'll cut off the avenues of passes. So there's a couple of passes that City really like. They like the one into Rodri that can open up the middle of the pitch, and if he can turn, then fine. If he can't turn, they like to kind of knock it back into one of the centre halves and kind of go again, reset that way. What they don't really like to do is be forced wide and then have nowhere to go when they've got wide, because all that happens is they end up passing it in a horseshoe formation around the edge of the box for an hour, and like an hour, 70 minutes or whatever. And then everybody goes, well, are they not going to be able to get the way into the box? So you kind of have to let City have the ball, but in areas where they're not going to hurt you with it. And it sounds daft. I mean, that sounds really obvious to say that. And then the second part of getting anything out of that game is you have to score when you get your chances. And more often than not, teams get chances against City, but you get one or you get two. You don't get, like, if you miss one or two, you're probably not going to get a third, and you're probably not going to get a fourth. Because the biggest difference between the City side that's coming to Carrow Road this year than the one that came in 2019 is it doesn't have Nicholas Otamendi at the back of it. So you're not going to continually get the chance to go, oh well, Otamendi's got it, so something's going to come of this now.
Yes. He was woeful that day.
The other thing that that sometimes happens is you need players. You need the bounce of the ball, and you need players to have an off day. When City players play badly, it's a thing that happens as a unit. It's not something that happens as a one-off. You don't have somebody who puts in a bad performance in amongst 10. Usually, if somebody's going to drop a stinker, usually about 7 or 8 of them are dropping a stinker at the same time.
Okay, yeah.
And it's very much
David. How do you get this?
It's very much be tight, be compact, and just don't give up as many chances as possible. So, like, it's about being solid and being defensively strong. And like it's hard. It really is hard to say that to come on and to opposition streams and say, oh well, this can happen, but it does happen. Yeah. There are times. I mean, you've seen in previous games, it happens. City aren't infallible. They're just very, very, very good, and they have a lot of resources to draw upon that a lot of teams don't have. So it's not an impossible ask. There's not a single Manchester City fan going into this weekend going, it will be 100% a nailed on away win. Equally, we're all going into it going, listen, if City play to the best of their ability, they'll win this game. There's no overconfidence in it all. There is just an acknowledgement that City have one of the best squads, and therefore sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. Equally, sometimes it doesn't go right. Absolutely.
And the thing that you've highlighted, the thing that's, again, I feel like, David, you can come on more often. You actually, I don't know whether maybe this water has actually got some lichens in it or something, but I actually am getting confidence from this because we're not giving away as many chances. I know it was Crystal Palace, but it took a worldie from outside the box to beat Angus Gunn on Wednesday night. Defensively, we are so much more compact than what we were last time we played at Carrow. Certainly what we were at the Etihad, which was, just absolutely dreadful.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I watched you when you came to the Etihad and you put in that performance. I thought there is absolutely no way they're staying up this season. It's like if that's how it's going to go down. And then, in fairness to Dean Smith, he's come in, and it must have been about 6 weeks ago. I put a message in our WhatsApp group that said, "I've got a funny feeling Norwich are staying up, lads." And then one of the others went, "Yeah, you know what? I can see that happening as well." What I didn't bank on is Newcastle in a bit of form as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's going to be close. It's going to be close. But my final point on that, David, actually, and this is for the Norwich City fans watching, kind of using you as almost like a counsellor here to help our positive game, is actually, I'm actually feeling quite okay with actually giving you guys possession in those areas. Our possession, I think, was so low against Palace. They had most of the ball, most of the game, really. And so as long as we can somehow shut down Kevin De Bruyne and God knows who else from outside the box, we'll be all right. Anyway, who are the Man City players where you're thinking, yeah, you know what, they are going to do some serious damage to Norwich on Saturday?
The funniest thing about all of this is that you look at all of City's attacking talent and all of the players that you go, yeah, he's a fantastic player. You mentioned De Bruyne, and then you go, he's a fantastic player. The one who is performing this season is João Cancelo. I can't really explain what it is. My understanding of football is not good enough to explain to you what he does. But he just seems to keep popping up with the ball in all the right areas. He, to the point where, for the last, it's been year after year after year going into the summer transfer window. We've all said, oh well, this is the summer where City finally need to go out and get a left back, and they haven't done it. And they've just kind of muddled through with what they've got. And now I look at the team and go, they probably need to get a right back, because if João Cancelo is doing this from left back, you've got Kyle Walker at right back. They haven't got any cover for Walker when he's not there. So they probably need a right back, because Zinchenko and Cancelo are doing fine on the left.
Yeah.
And he's been one of the. I think I heard a stat at the weekend of the FA Cup games that I'm not a massive fantasy league player, and I've already mentioned this twice now. But he scored the third most points in the whole of fantasy league.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Which like for a defender, goes to show exactly what it is he's doing. He's helping the team to clean sheets, which is getting in points. But he's popping up with assists, and he must have scored a couple this season. I remember one at Newcastle that was a pretty decent hit. So he's popping up all over the place and in key areas and helping City win the ball back really high up. There was he loves a good outside of the foot pass as well. There's you know those sorts of players where you think just use your wrong foot. He will not do it. He will use the outside of his foot, and he's pretty good at them as well. So we'll keep an eye out for that.
I wish we had that sort of prowess, but sadly I can't confidently say that we do. Every now and then, maybe, who knows? Maybe Josh Sargent will come up trumps the weekend. And a player that I really, really want to talk about, David, is Jack Grealish. I believe he scored his first goal for Manchester City against Norwich at the Etihad. I think that's correct. Has he justified his eye-watering price tag? Because I'm not sure. I really want to hear it from a Man City fan. Like, did you expect him to hit the ground running, or is this the sort of the season that you were expecting from Jack Grealish?
This is pretty much what I was expecting, largely because I can't think of any attacking player that's come into City under Guardiola and hit the ground running, because it just doesn't happen. Riyad Mahrez didn't do it. You know, he came in and it took a season to adapt. Leroy Sané took a season to adapt. Even the players that were there already, you know, Raheem Sterling was good in his first season under Pep, but then seasons 2 and 3 was utterly fantastic.
Yeah.
Aguero, there was talk at one point that Aguero would leave City because he just wasn't doing what Guardiola wanted and couldn't, and the two of them couldn't really get how he should move and how he should be on the pitch. And then you look at how his time at City ended, and he's one of the key men for the Guardiola era. So no, I didn't expect. You spend 100 million on Jack Grealish, I didn't expect him to come in and be ripping up trees to begin with. I don't think he has been. I don't think he's been a disaster. I don't think he's been particularly terrible. There's a lot of pressure on him from outside to perform. I don't think Guardiola is really kind of demanding more of him, largely because he keeps playing. If he's playing, then he's obviously doing something that Guardiola wants him to do.
Is he starting? Sorry to interrupt you. Is he starting at the
moment? Yes and no. He's not been. I think back to someone like Mahrez's first season in 18-19. There was a good spell through like January, February, March, where he might have only got one start in kind of like 3 or 4 months or so. And he was coming off the bench, and he was kind of not really involved. And I remember thinking that was the season where City won the title over Liverpool by a point. It was 98, 97 points. And I remember thinking it was a real shock to see that Guardiola had named Mahrez in the starting lineup for the final day of the season against Brighton, because he'd just not been involved.
Really?
Whereas Grealish is involved. He's maybe not starting as every game or so, but he is. He came off the bench against Brentford, and again they scored within about 2 or 3 minutes of him coming on. He started against Fulham in the FA Cup, and okay, Fulham are not a Premier League side, but they're as close to being a Premier League side as they can be right now. And he did really well, and I think he is doing fine, and I think he will do better next season again. And I think from outside the club, a lot of people will look at the fee of 100 million and go, they've overspent on this. And I think from inside the club, I still think they think they've got a bargain. So I think everybody's happy with it, really.
It'll be really interesting to see whether he does choose to start. Pep wants to choose him on Saturday to start, because of course there's the Dean Smith connection there, and I'm a bit kind of contested in my head on this, David, because I'm thinking, well, part of me says, well, actually, Dino will suss out Jack. They'll be fully briefed. It'll be fine. But then part of me is like, Jack's going to be chomping at the bit to almost beat.
But then you also you have to take into account that Guardiola might know all this anyway and think, well, we'll play him at right back and see what happens. So, because it's the sort of thing where that Guardiola does. He takes the Champions League final and goes, you know what, we don't want a holding midfielder for this one. So yeah, you don't always know what you're going to get. My gut instinct is that he's probably not going to start, but I've thought this in the past and he started. So I honestly, with City at the minute, naming the back kind of six is usually pretty good. I could sit here now and tell you that it'll be Ederson in goal. The fullbacks will be Cancelo, probably Walker, although he played Stones at the weekend as fullback. And then it will be one of Laporte, Diaz, or Stones. Two of Laporte, Diaz, and Stones in the centre. After that, you've got Rodri in holding midfield, and the rest of it is roll of dice because you don't know who you're going to get. It could be anybody.
Well, David, again, you're giving me confidence. Ederson and Kyle Walker will be absolutely quaking in their boots because, of course, they played in that game against us last year. So, maybe we could see a bit repeat. Let's go to the comment section quickly because loads of comments are coming in, and thank you so much for that. And if you are enjoying this video, do give it a like and get involved in the conversation on social media. We are at Talk Norwich City. First of all, Jack Bailey on YouTube says this is going to be a scrappy game. Interesting. I'm not sure if I agree. I don't know. David, do you agree? Do you think it'd be a scrappy game?
Could be. I suspect you guys might be more happy than we would be with a scrappy game because it means we're not getting our foot on the ball and passing it round. So if you can make it scrappy, then I don't think you'd complain, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sue Cassidy on Facebook is responding to how the hell do we get City to have an off day? She says stick some laxative in their coca. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe someone can go to Sprowston Manor or wherever the City team will be staying. Maybe
do you remember? This is an obscure reference, and I'm sorry to everybody who doesn't know, who's never played this and remember it. But you know the football game, Football Manager.
Yes.
There was a spin-off that was used to play it online. It was called Expert 11. And it generated like random squads and stuff, and you played in leagues against your friends, and you had these little tricks that you could play on everybody, so that you could go to the training ground and like spike the food so they weren't playing well, or you could steal all the balls so that they couldn't train in the week up to your game or something like that. And like that was, you would spend part of your budget on that. It was a web only game, and it was fantastic, and I forgot all about it until that.
Well, I tell you what, David, I mean, make it a reality. Norwich fans need to be outside the hotel with fireworks. We need to spike drinks. We need to we need to pull out all of the stops to do this. But there you go. Ash Bootle on YouTube. Hello, Ash. Good evening. He says expectation equals pressure. Won't expect to win. Man City are expected to win. I reckon another very good game, which is interestingly indeed. Loads of good comments coming in. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the love as always. David, let's move on to your thoughts on Norwich City now. I know that you've already said that you and your pals have said that you think Norwich might have a chance of surviving. What have you made of our development under Dean Smith since he's come into the club?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would caveat that with is you went on this. You had that winning run of 3 wins in. Was it 3 wins in 4 or 3 in a row at one point recently? And I looked at the teams you've beaten, and I thought,
we're unbeaten 5 or 6 now, David.
Yeah, but I looked at the teams that you'd won against and thought if I was going to pick a team that was struggling down at the bottom, if I was going to pick teams that they'd beaten in a winning run, they would be the teams. So like that is a positive. As like it sounds like I'm like what I'm doing there is saying, well, they've only beaten Everton or they've only beaten Newcastle or whatever. But what it means is you're beating the teams that you're trying to catch up against, and that is teams that go down don't take enough points off the teams that are around them. And they might win the odd game here and there against a team that is chasing Europe or a team that's going for the title. But that's not enough to stay up. You have to actively damage the survival chances of the teams around you. And that's what's made that unbeaten and winning run quite I think significant in the survival chase, because like I said at the start of the season when you came to the Etihad, I thought you had absolutely no hope whatsoever of staying up, and that has changed significantly since Dean Smith's come in. Because the one thing I think it's a very smart appointment, very shrewd appointment, because you got in there quickly when he became available. And I think I've not seen enough of you in recent weeks to say that he's changed what he's changed, but he's obviously changed enough to that you're not conceding really stupid goals anymore. And you are, I don't want to say you're taking chances because you are still the league's lowest scorers, but it's not about. I always give City in 2007 as an example of this. City were the lowest scorers in 2007 in the Premier League, and they finished about 14th. It's teams. Pundits always say the teams that don't score enough go down, and that's not true. It's the teams that concede too many that go down. So you tighten the defense up first, and then you go about getting goals after that. The one thing that we knew about City in 2007 was that if they conceded, they probably weren't going to win the game. But if they didn't concede, they had a chance because they were only at most they were only going to score once or twice.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting perspective, actually. I will slightly challenge you on that, though, because you say slowest scorers. We've got the fastest Premier League goal this season.
I said lowest scorers, not slowest scorers.
Oh,
yeah.
Are you sure?
yeah. You have to rewind it and find out. But if I said slowest, I meant lowest.
I'll have to fact check that.
It's really annoyed me that you're the lowest scorers so far this season because Wolves are on course to have a truly bizarre season. Because if they were the lowest scorers, because the best goal difference by a team with the lowest scorers is like -10 or something like that.
Yeah.
But Wolves have conceded so few, and scored so few that if they were the lowest scorers this season, they would smash that record, and that's a really niche record that I'd like to see go. And I only know that because I went and looked the other week because I thought I was quite interested in I thought City might have the best goal difference for the lowest scorers from that 2007 season, but it's not. It's Leeds in '96, I think.
There you go, people. You're learning new stuff every day. This is an interesting point that we've got in the comment section from Matters HD. This absolutely reeks of a Brandon Williams chance goal against his parent club's rivals. Now, that's an interesting point. And I think Susanna George is also put a comment in about Brandon Williams. I think that is because she enjoys him aesthetically as well. And she says,
"Hey, I'm not knocking it."
Oh no, absolutely not. I mean, why not? Brandon Williams is passionate now. How fired up will he be from being from United, of course? And I agree, that will be a very, very feisty battle. And of course, the Manchester United fans will be watching on, wanting him to do some damage against Manchester City. And David,
will they? Because are they going to get anywhere near City this season? United?
Oh no,
yeah, exactly. If that's all they've got, I mean,
well, exactly. Of course, well, exactly. That is all they've got. And by the way, they are woeful. I'm going to say this.
Terrible. They're terrible. Aren't they?
Let's bathe in this. United are terrible. I'm still so annoyed that we lost 1-0 to them from a penalty. Like, they were so average. Anyway, let's move on from Manchester United because I know you don't want to talk about them either.
I can happily chat away about how bad they are. Don't worry about that. I grew up in supporting City in the 90s. I'm not passing up the opportunity to have a dig at United.
Fair enough. You're still enjoying that. I asked this question to everyone that's on the Oppo live, David, which is that if you had to sign, and I don't know how on earth you're going to answer this, if you had to sign a Norwich player right now for Manchester City, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I thought about this, and I honestly don't know. Because my gut instinct is to say, to throw it back to you and say, who is your best scoring striker right now? Because City don't have a striker. And the number of times where we get the ball to the byline and drill it across, and then we go, oh yeah, there's nobody there.
Oh, well, if you're drilling balls across the box, then I think you might need a bit of a Josh Sargent because, of course, he's good at scoring scorpion kicks these days.
There you go then. If that's the answer to that question, then it's probably Josh Sargent. I mean, the other one who a couple of years ago, I'd have said Todd Cantwell because he was a great player. He was doing really well, and I don't really understand why it went south for him at Norwich. Does Billy Gilmour count? Is he a Chelsea player or a Norwich player? I don't what does he count?
Yeah, Billy. I think I'll let you have a lone player, but it's really interesting that you should highlight those two because, of course, Todd fell out of favour. Daniel Farke derailed him, and then his mentality was crushed, and then he got injured, and then he got COVID, then there's a family problem, and the list goes on, mate. So Todd's now at Bournemouth, and has been disappointing for all of the Norwich fans this season. We thought he was going to do much better than he did, and then Billy Gilmour as well. He's a player that doesn't really fit into our system, if I'm really honest, mate. A player that I was I was buzzing about. I think Billy is such a talented player, but he just doesn't fit with Norwich City, in my opinion. And I hope
has he played much recently?
No, he's not playing much at all, mate. There was, I think, an injury in there as well, but
yeah,
I think basically Dino's offered for. He's gone for more of a steely midfielder, a tackler, someone that's going to get about the pitch more. Billy is a player, in my opinion, that enjoys time on the ball, can dictate play. He's a bit of a sat nav, I think. And as I say, I really like Billy, love him, very talented player. But yeah, interesting that you should raise those 2 points there.
Well, my final choice was basically built into what I was saying before. Is that if we've given up any idea of City going after a left back because Cancelo and Zinchenko have got it nailed down, how about Max Aarons as right back? Because I remember you came on Blue Moon must have been ahead of the game in 2019.
Yeah.
And talked about what a prospect he was. And ever since his name stuck in my head then. And every now and then when you watch a match today, you go, oh, that wasn't bad. Oh, it was Max Aarons. There we go. Yeah.
He is a player, mate. He is a player indeed. And certainly has a bright future ahead of him, that's for sure. David, let's get to the crux of this conversation now, and let's start to talk about this game. Although we haven't got much time, but let's talk about this game quickly. How do you think this will pan out? Do you think, like, honestly, be really brave here, do you think this will be a walk in the park for Manchester City?
No, I never go into games saying that I think that, because I genuinely don't. I've seen enough games where City go up against a side that is fighting for every point at the bottom of the table, and they may get like City might come out of it the other side and win, and City might come out of the other side and win 3-0 or whatever. But it wasn't a walk in the park. I remember there's been so many times where it's been 0-0 on 70 minutes, and then City have got the breakthrough, and then they've got the second one, and it's just kind of caused the collapse towards the end of the game. And at the end of it, you look at the scoreline and you go, solid 3-0 away win there, and it just that's not how it's panned out. Equally, there's other times where you go into these games and you go, this is going to be tough. And like we went to Watford earlier in the season, just after Ranieri was appointed, and they'd just beaten United, and like at that point we were like, well, this is going to be a tough game. And I think they were 3-0 up inside half an hour. And so you go, okay, well, I've read that one wrong. So my gut instinct is not that any game will ever be a walk in the park. I think you have to look at the way that the teams play, and I like City. There's no illusions here. Nobody's expecting City to go to Carrow Road and lose this game. That's not to say that we all expect City, like City fans anyway, expect to go there and go, right, well, we'll just turn up and we'll get the job done, because we know it doesn't work like that. So I think in terms of how the game will go, I think City will have a lot of the ball. I don't expect Norwich to have a lot of the ball. I expect Norwich to try and stay compact and try and cut out those spaces. I expect them to try and do what I said and cut out the pass from the centre halves to the holding midfielder. And then it's kind of anybody's guess after that, because if City can find a way through and get a breakthrough, then it almost throws the Norwich plans out. So 1-0 doesn't really throw the Norwich plans out the window, but if they can then get a second, it does, because at some point you're going to have to go, right, well, if we're going to get something out of this game, we need to change what we're doing. And that sometimes it works both ways. Either you end up, pulling a goal back and then suddenly it's game on again, or it opens the door and City run riot. Equally, if City don't get the breakthrough and Norwich stay compact and it's 0-0 or you break away and score a chance, then that's when City start to panic. And the one thing I'll say about City as an away side is, when things are going badly and things aren't working, it's very, very rare that City turn it around from a bad position. They're very good at digging in and kind of, if things are tight and they're not behind, they're very good at grinding out the result. But if they go behind and they have to kind of grind from behind to get in front, they find that very, very difficult. I mean, I mentioned the Champions League final before, and I know Chelsea and Norwich are different propositions, but about 10 minutes into the Champions League final, every single City fan was looking at each other going, they're just not going to win this. There's no way they're going to win this. And you can kind of get that read from them.
Well, that's what happened last time, David, wasn't it?
I mean,
stunned Man City, and that was my question to you. Like, if Norwich City stun Man City and we score first, what happens then?
Yeah, it all depends, I think, on how City are playing. And that day, You think of that 2019 one. That day, you didn't. It wasn't Norwich scoring first that won that game. It was the sense of how City were prepared to not fight back from it. And I think you watch, because I think of the Southampton game earlier in it would have been before the winter break, the game before the winter break when we went to St Mary's. Southampton scored first, and they scored really early on, and City had a lot of the ball and weren't really doing much with it. And there was a few of us looking at each other going, this is a game where they're not going to come back into it. And then the second half comes along, Pep makes a slight tactical tweak, and they play a lot better and get back into it. There was enough in that performance to say there's a fight back on. At Carrow Road in 2019, there just wasn't. City could have, you didn't need to score the extra goals in that game, because there was no way City were going to have enough. And the fact that Rodri scored really late on to make it 3-2 really, really kind of, it put a shadow on the dominance that Norwich had in that game. You were well in control of the game, in a way that doesn't happen very often anymore for City. It can happen, and it has happened a couple of times this season, but yeah, it's not as regular as it was back then.
David, I have to revel in that game. I have to. And Norwich fans taking a lot of encouragement from that, because we had 9 players out injured that game. And I remember walking to the ground, and it was almost like we all arrived for a funeral. Like, we were expecting to just get absolutely mauled. I remember in our matchday experience, I said 7-0, Aguero to score 4. And meant it, because we were just an absolute state at that point. A proper David versus Goliath, obviously, unfortunately for you, but obviously great for Norwich City contest that was one of our most famous wins of all time. What are your memories from that game? Because I remember, and I actually have got a lot of respect for Manchester City fans after that game. And I said this on Blue Moon podcast, your podcast, of course. And bigged up the City fans, because I vividly remember afterwards, Man City fans, they weren't giving it fingers, they weren't doing any of that.
Yeah. There's a very much sense of the better side won, and you deserve to win. Yeah.
And we stopped the run, didn't we? And I just remember, like, I've never seen that in a football stadium before, where the away fans were so, like, they were almost in awe of us, which I thought was just really weird.
There's the one thing I'll say for City fans is there's not very often where I feel that if City have lost and deserve to lose, I think the match-going City fans will quite happily go, yeah, we didn't deserve anything out of that, and we got what we deserved, and fair play to you. The one I always think of is the Wigan FA Cup final in 2013.
Yeah.
There was a lot of City fans. There was a lot of anger from City fans that day, but it wasn't directed at Wigan, and it wasn't directed at the players. It was directed at the club for the whole situation going on behind the scenes with Mancini and Pellegrini, and that ultimately proving a distraction. So I think that Norwich game in 2019, I can't remember what City's run was in the run up to it, but there was enough in the games beforehand for us to have gone, something doesn't quite feel right this season.
Really?
The game that second game of the season, we drew with Spurs 2-2 at the Etihad,
right.
And it was through that period where. I'm not a massive kind of here's the stats for everything guy, but XG is useful at times, and it was really useful to it is really useful for to measure how City and Spurs were going at that time, because Spurs' XG for that game was 0.07. And they scored twice, and City's was like 5.1 or something like that, and they scored twice.
And you're going to get on Saturday, mate. You're going to get that.
That was the story of the season. City were giving up too many goals from positions where they shouldn't really give up a goal, and then they weren't scoring dead cert chances, and like you mix those two in, and the end of 2019-20, they finished 18, 19 points behind Liverpool. But City were the top scorers in the league, and they had the best defense, and like that doesn't add up. And what it means is that there were too many games where they lost stupidly 1-0 or 2-1. And too many games where instead of scoring 1 goal in that game to equalise, they scored 8 against Watford or something like that. So, like, going to Carrow Road at that point, there was a little bit of a feeling of something isn't quite right, and they really need to get the backsides in gear here. And it has to start today. And then Otamendi does what Otamendi does, and just like was it the third goal where Edison passed?
Gave it to Pukki. He slotted
it home. Where Edison passed it to him, and like he turned into the into the forward, and then went, well, why didn't you tell me I had a man on? And I was like, well, like at what point do you not realise that somebody might be closing you down? Yeah. Like but maybe you could do something with it. Like I don't know.
To be fair though, we were just on a whole other level. Like that, I've never seen us hunt like we hunted against City.
Yeah, I did say at the end of that game, if you play like that for the rest of the season, you'll comfortably stay up. And you obviously didn't play like that for the rest of the season, did you?
That arguably will go in the end. It really was indeed. Some love for you in the comment section. Simon says, very honest from David. Not all Man City fans would have said that. So there you go. Some respect for you, David.
Maybe it just means I'm a clown. I don't know.
Right. This is the moment. It's time for your score prediction. But as always, on Talking Norwich City, we do it a bit differently. What is your head saying and what is your heart saying?
My head says just trust City to get the job done, because that's all they've done this season is play well and get the well, not necessarily play well, but they've got the job done. So my head says make it a nice, comfortable 3-1 victory for 3-1 away win. Because that's what City do. They don't make they're experienced now to not make hard work of these sorts of games. My heart's saying don't forget that this is City and they can chuck in a bad performance whenever they want to. So make it so it's not going to be as simple as a nice easy 3-1 away win. And so I've gone so for a heartfelt thing. I think City will just about do it. But I'm going to say 2-1 and a lot of pressure towards the end.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I didn't expect you to come out with that, David, actually. Again, that's made me pop my chest out a little bit more. Right. My head says, I don't know. This is such a big game. My head says 3-0, annoyingly. I just, as much as that sounds defeatist, the Norwich fans won't like me saying this. I just look at City and I think, my God, where do you even begin?
Yeah, I know what you mean, because listen, I know the game isn't played on paper, but on paper, City win that game pretty much every time that it's played. But that was the same in 2019. On paper, City win that game every time it's played, except the game isn't played on paper, and that's the little kind of void that we're trying to work in here. You're working in kind of real life and like what should happen. And we're in this kind of narrow bit in the middle of trying to work out what is going to happen.
But my heart, and I'm going to put it out there, my heart says lightning strikes twice. And my heart says Norwich somehow steal a 1-0 win. It's going to be a terrible game. The Man City fans will be very anxious at this point. And I can see Jonathan Rowe, youth prospect, comes off the bench, slots it home, knee slides to the snake pit, shirts off, chaos at Carrow Road again. David, how would you feel if that happened?
Well, as long as I will feel annoyed unless you deserve it. If you play well and you deserve the win, then I won't be annoyed at that.
David, we actually need to have a serious conversation now. But let's be honest.
What have I done? What have I done now?
No, this is a serious conversation now, David. You don't need the points. You don't need
I said to you before we do, because Liverpool are 6 points behind it. And then
rubbish. You will steamroll this thing. You're going to win the league, David, right? So just lend us 3 points. How about that?
I see the problem. How about we'll let whatever happens happen on Saturday. And every time we come up against all your other relegation rivals, we'll do the same with them. I've just by the way, I've just looked up the odds of being hit by lightning twice, and it's roughly 1 in 2 million. So I'd stick a fiver on it just in case.
David, mate, I really appreciate your time. You've spoke so eloquently and given us so much insight into the world of Manchester City, as always. I do highly recommend people go and follow David on Twitter. Go and subscribe to the Blue Moon Pod. If you are in and around the club, it's going to be a good one for you. Thank you so much for your time, David. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
And thank you so much to everyone that's watched. If you have got to this point and you've not, you're not a nervous wreck and you've switched it off because you're so nervous for the game, please do subscribe to Talk Norwich City on YouTube. Give this a like and get involved in the conversation. We are at Talk Norwich City. Fingers crossed, everything crossed. In fact, pray. Wear your lucky pants. Do whatever you need to do, people. But the next time
does that work? Like, where you lucky pants? Does that work? Because what influence does that have on the 11 fellas on the pitch?
Well, David, let me tell you, I have a pair of lucky pants that I've
have you worn them? Have you worn them for every game this season?
No, absolutely not. Got to be brought out for the special occasion. They're like yellow and green patterns, and I wore them for the playoff semi-final against Ipswich, the Wembley playoff final. I think I've worn them in another big game as well. I can't remember now, but yeah, I do have lucky pants. There you go.
All right, I tell you what. I tell you what. Right, wear them on Saturday.
Oh, I don't know. It seems like
wear them on Saturday. No, wear them on Saturday, and if they win, okay, I want a photograph of you in them in Carrow Road.
I wish I hadn't said that now. Right, people, thanks for watching. Fingers crossed for a win, and on the ball, City.